From nearly the beginning, the X-Men have been used as an analogy for minorities, specifically oppressed minority groups. I say almost, as there is a misconception that Stan Lee created the X-Men with the intention of them being an analogy for blacks or gays. In the interviews I have seen, Stan Lee always either ignores or sidesteps the question, very deliberately stating that they were meant to be against bigotry, always making sure to never answer the question of them being analogies for blacks or gays directly. In any case, soon after publishing his first X-Men run, many creatives used the X-Men as analogies for blacks, especially during the Civil Rights era. Afterwards, the 2000s live-action X-Men movie, perhaps my first introduction to the X-Men franchise, seems to use the X-Men as analogies for homosexuals. In both cases, this is blatantly retarded, likening mutants, a genetically identifiable subspecies of human whose members have the ability to explode people's heads with their minds, laser their way through whole armies, or mind control military personnel with access to nuclear launch codes, to protected minorities, is retarded. The first kernels of this realization I've come to occurred upon re-watching one of my favorite childhood movies, the 2000s X-Men I mentioned previously. In this movie, there is a character named Senator Kelly, who, in one of the opening scenes, gives a speech concerning the dangers of mutants.
The beginnings of another stage of human evolution. These mutations manifest at puberty and are often triggered by periods of heightened emotional stress.
Thank you, Miss Gray. It was quite educational. However, it fails to address the issue that is the focus of this hearing. 3 words. Are mutants dangerous?
I'm afraid that's an unfair question, Senator Kelly.
What is it the mutant community has to hide, I wonder, that makes them so afraid to identify themselves?
I didn't say they were hiding.
Well, let me show you what is being hidden, Miss Gray. I have here a list of names of identified mutants living right here in the United States.
Senator
Here's
Kelly.
a girl in Illinois who can walk through walls. Now, what's to stop her from walking into a bank vault, or into the White House, or into their houses?
Senator
And there
Kelly.
are even rumors, Miss Gray, of mutants so powerful that they can enter our minds and control our thoughts, taking away our God-given free will. Now, I think the American people deserve the right to decide whether they want their children to be in school with mutants, to be taught by mutants. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is that mutants are very real, and they are among us. We must know who they are, and above all, we must know what they can do.
This speech is regarded with contempt by Magneto and disappointment by Professor Xavier, clearly trying to convey to the audience that there is something somehow wrong with this speech, and that it is meant to present the senator as a bad guy when he is completely right. If a mutant who had the ability to phase decided to walk into a bank vault, who could stop it? A telepath could mind control soldiers into firing nukes if they wished to, yet the senator is depicted as being the bad guy? There is a scene in which he calls mutants weapons, which is wrong. They are not just weapons, they are people. However, this is exactly the problem I wish to point out. Throughout the entirety of the X-Men's existence, there has never been a character who rightfully sees mutants as the potential danger to humanity that they are, who is shown in a positive light. Every single time, they are made by the writers to do and say villainous things. In the senator's case, they did a poor job of making him out to be the bad guy. However, in many cases, the writers have the character being genocidal. Take the new X-Men 97. Executioner says many things that are valid, however, they are deliberately fed to you, the audience, along with other statements that are repugnant. The writers feed the audience the valid points, the healthy vegetable soup, with the morally wrong, repugnant statements, the poison. By doing this, by eating the healthy soup with the repugnant, vile-tasting poison, the audience is made to be repulsed by the soup, their brains being tricked into thinking that the soup itself is the poison, including the healthy vegetables, so that they can't see that which is valid, true, or morally good without it being tainted in their minds by the vileness of executioner. By repeatedly making every character who sees mutants as the potential danger that they are, and stretching that perfectly logical position out to the extremity of genocide, whilst depicting those who are rightfully fearful and angry of mutants as racists, you are branding humanity's healthy immune system as being immoral, when it isn't immoral. There are mutant battles destroying whole city streets, breaking out every week. You have Magneto in the new X-Men 97 killing untold hundreds of millions of innocents, ironically proving Executioner right. Some have made the argument that a multitude of other superpowered beings exist throughout Marvel, so why aren't they being protested like the mutants? In response, I would make the counter-argument that these mutants equals minority stories exist within the world of X-Men, largely siloed away from Marvel as a whole. It's like asking why Superman or the Flash don't stop by Gotham and round up the entire rogues gallery before lunch, because then there would be no Batman stories. Gotham is its own world, largely insulated from DC as a whole. Being cautious of mutants, viewing them as a potential danger to humanity, is natural and healthy. Being fearful of mutants, whose members can explode people's heads with their minds or cut whole armies in half with their laser vision, both of whom know this from experience, is completely normal. It isn't racism or homophobia, it's common sense. By labeling it as any of the ists or isms or phobes, you are pathologizing humanity's healthy immune system. It's something I'm completely against. I've been thinking about this a lot, and if I were to suddenly be given superpowers, along with a few others, becoming a mutant equivalent, I would hold these same beliefs that I do now. And I would see the real-world equivalent of characters like Senator Kelly or Executioner or the Judge from the comics' existence as a good thing. Not their genocidalism or indiscriminate killing of my kind, no matter how innocent, or how many times they've proven themselves to be for humanity, but that their existence in and of itself shows that humanity's self-defense system is operational and functioning. They and other members of the mob that form against the mutants in X-Men 97, for instance, behind Executioner, are white blood cells. Their existence is proof that humanity's immune system is healthy. White blood cells that the X-Men world demonize and pathologize. By deliberately making the only characters who rightfully see mutants as a danger to humanity into Nazis, it makes the position that mutants are a potential danger seem as if only a Nazi could hold that position. It's a pathologization of humanity's immune system, a healthy immune system. It equates wanting to defend your species against superpowered beings whose members could cut whole crowds of people in half with their laser eyes, or mind control the Prime Minister into launching nuclear missiles, with being a white supremacist. It's retarded and only makes gays and blacks seem as though they are actually a danger and to be opposed, which is something you wouldn't want if you were pro these groups. I believe this connects with the left wing's overly pro-immigration stance. Leftists have allowed millions of immigrants into the West, regardless of how violent many of them are, how many of them have criminal tendencies, or if they are unwilling to assimilate into Western civilization and the culture of the countries they push so hard to get into. Because this is something the left doesn't seem to understand. When you bring outsiders into a country, not only are you bringing in people, you are importing ideologies along with them, including ideologies that are antithetical to Western civilization and the values of the host countries. The most dangerous of these being Islam. If you think of Western civilization as an organism, and certain ideologies, such as Islam, as being a virus or a parasite, which infects and slowly takes over the host body. The moral value system, as it is presented in the Quran, makes it so that true Muslims have an obligation, a duty, to make everything into Islam, to replace the host country's monuments and culture with their own. Because of the moral value system they adhere to, true Muslims cannot assimilate into the host culture but must force the culture to conform to Islam. Of course, this is not limited to the ideology of Islam. I'm against African, especially sub-Saharan African, immigration as well. For evidence of the mass importation of non-Westerners into the West being bad, I have 3 examples. 1. In England, there has been a steady increase from 1970 onward. During this time, there has been a steady increase in crime rate, with London's demographics having a greater non-native, white, population, 40%, than ever before, whilst also having, as of 2023, the highest crime rate ever reported in decades. Not to mention, the period of time in London with the highest rates of homicide corresponds with a huge surge of immigration rates in London. In France, there is a higher percentage of immigrants than has ever been recorded, totaling 10.3% of the population, and as the immigrants have come pouring in, the levels of crime has subsequently increased substantially. In Australia, our government will not reveal nor seemingly gather the statistics regarding immigrant crimes or breaking down the criminal statistics by race or ethnicity, aside from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. We used to, however, the government stopped doing so decades ago in the name of anti-racism, which the fact they thought that the statistics were racist or would be used by racists against certain groups tells one all one needs to know about the percentage of crimes committed by those groups compared to others. Yet, I was able to dig up this statistic. The highest number of prisoners per capita were Nigerians, 1,014 prisoners per 100,000 population born in Nigeria, followed by Indonesians. This number is higher than any non-immigrant group aside from Aboriginals, who have a 2,559 prisoners per 100,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population as of 2019. Immigrants make up 20% of all crime, which is almost the highest per demographic, second only to the Aboriginal rate of 26%. The reason X-Men denigrating humanity's healthy immune system and twisting people's perception of it into something racist, white supremacist, or any otherist is wrong, and the reason it connects with leftism is because it equates defending your in-group, my in-group being Australia, Aussie culture, and more broadly Western civilization, from the out-group with racism and labeling those who do so as being racist or a white supremacist, which is what the left have done for at least a decade.